If you work in quality control at a candy factory, you know strict safety regulations come with the job. It's why you partner with Grainger. Grainger helps you find the high-quality and compliant products your business needs to inspect, detect, and help correct issues. And the sweetest part is, everyone gets a product that's as safe to eat as it is delicious. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
A warmer from the hello, welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the Beats and Family Podcast. We've got a great podcast for you. Joining me in segment number 2, we're going to be joined by Rob Donaldson. He does a tremendous job over on his show/podcast, the Rob's Best Bet Show, which you're able to find at youtube.com/Rob Donaldson. He has done an incredible job joining me to take a look at baseball all season long. Last year, did a great job on the college basketball front, and he, much like myself, doing everything humanly possible to get set for the upcoming college basketball season. So we're just going to be diving into some of the information he's taken a look at these last 2 weeks in preparing for the upcoming season that is going to get him set for night number 1. What he makes out of some of these anti-air quotes here, secret scrimmages, some of his takeaways / lack of takeaways from those. Some of the teams that you might be looking to bet / fade early, a few teams that are under the radar. So it is going to be a very wide-ranging conversation with him in segment number 2. And here in segment number 1, didn't see a lot of college basketball news on Tuesday. Most of it we saw on Monday. And we will be hashing out some of those storylines as well, like Raekwon Battle being out of the fold for West Virginia, something that we're going to be mentioning with our good friend Rob Donaldson. We're going to be mentioning some of the big injury issues that we've been seeing on that front, but we are going to be diving into that in segment number 2. But here in segment number 1, really the lone thing that we saw was a former top 100 recruit stepping away from their program. We're going to be hitting that in a minute, and if you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways to be able to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @unit_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please just send these into the timeline, and the other way, that's fine, an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated, and then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. And I know that a lot of you guys have been looking for some conference previews. I've got all 32 conference previews in podcast form, so I've already got you guys all covered there. If you just go on like Apple Podcasts, Google Play, wherever you get your podcasts, you just scroll down and you look for whatever conference you are looking for. We've got you guys all covered there, but we do have one piece of news that we've got it from college basketball from Tuesday, and that is the fact that Rodney Rice, a former top 75 recruit for the Virginia Tech Hokies, was a freshman last season. He has decided that he is going to be stepping away from the program and he is going to depart there. Just was unable to really get out there on the floor for Virginia Tech. You wish him absolutely nothing but the best. Last year was just marred by injuries for him. He was only able to get out there for, I believe it was something like 8 games, averaged about 7.5 points per contest. Showed a little bit of upside when he was able to get out there, but that was very little with regards to his playing time. It was few and far between what he was actually available, so you just hope that he's able to have everything in his life in general all in line, that he's able to go to a new school and he's able to resurface, be able to become that guy that we were expecting him to be when he was coming out of high school. There was a little bit of an additional piece of injury news in Cameron Tweedy. It's not necessarily the world's biggest player. He was at Fairleigh Dickinson last year. The 3.5 points, 2.5 rebounds per game, it's not eye-popping, but he's out for the season. What I do think is of significance, though, is that he came on strong for Fairleigh Dickinson towards the back half of the season last year. As we know, FDU, they did lose quite a few of those pieces that allowed them to knock off Purdue last season. And in those 2 games in the NCAA tournament, against Purdue, against Florida Atlantic, this excludes the round number 1 opening game against Texas Southern. He had a combined 16 points, 8 rebounds, and he put up 6+ points in 4 out of the team's last 5 games. Even in that NEC championship loss against Merrimack, he had 13 points, 9 boards at 6'4", was a relatively good rebounder for his size. Didn't warrant a lot of minutes towards the beginning part of the season, but towards the back half of the campaign, he was able to get a little bit more time out there. He was able to be a nice contributor for Fairleigh Dickinson in that late season run, so that is going to be a loss that hurts them a little bit as well. So those are the sorts of pieces that I'm taking a look at right now. I intentionally did my conference previews a little bit earlier this year because I want everything to be as buttoned down. I want to have as many good angles coming into night number 1 of the college basketball season as possible, and being able to unearth things like Cameron Tweedy being out of the fold. That's something that I'm looking to do. And what else I'm looking to do? Get on great guest, Rob Donaldson. He fits the bill. Wide-ranging chat with him coming up next, looking at how to gauge player injuries, gauging these secret scrimmages. We're going to be looking at some teams that he's bullish on, teams that he's looking to back and fade, and so much more. So that is going to be coming up next. Right here on Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the Decent Family Podcast.
Sports Betting Innovative Analytics has taken the guesswork and emotion out of sports betting to bring you an innovative and trustworthy resource to enhance your journey to becoming a winning player. With industry-leading money-back guarantee options backed by their sophisticated modeling, they want to introduce you to a system that's not widely seen or available to help you beat the bookmaker. Specializing in NBA, college basketball, and WNBA, your first week is always free. Get started at SBIA1.com today.
We're back in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the Beast and Family Podcast, and it is always great to be joined by this man as Rob Donaldson. He does tremendous work taking a look at so many different things. He has been doing an amazing job with regards to baseball front all season long, does a great job with his college football bets, and he is preparing, much like myself, for an amazing college basketball season. He does a great job with his show, the Rob's Best Bet Show, which you're able to find on youtube.com/Rob Donaldson. That's pretty much 5 days a week when things are hot and heavy with regards to baseball and college basketball seasons. And you're able to follow Rob on Twitter/X at RobDFB altogether. And he also does some great work with Underdog Fantasy as well. And Rob, always great to have you aboard. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, Greg. And man, November 6th is coming up fast, and that just means that we have months and months and months of college basketball just stacked on top of each other. Obviously, all the other sports and craziness that are going on, and what a fun time to be a sports bettor.
Oh, it is a very fun time. We've got the sports equinox going on right now, and when baseball ends, college basketball begins, and we're less than 2 weeks away. And right now, the big takeaway that a lot of people are having is these, and I air quotes here, secret scrimmages, which I still feel like if we're calling these secret scrimmages, the threshold for something to be called a scrimmage has really went way down, and it's just pathetic at this point because there's a lot of video, there's a lot of people in attendance for these anti-air quotes here, secret scrimmages. So the secrets have certainly gotten out, but what are some of your takeaways from these? Because I do think that the people that are thinking like their team is going to win a national championship because they won a scrimmage against insert schlub school here by 5 are taking it a little bit too far. But at the same time, I do think that if you look at the context of some of these scrimmages, there is something to be taken away.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. And, you have teams like Iowa State playing Creighton close and fans thinking, hey, that's a moral win because of how high Creighton is in the rankings. And let's just see how far we can take this thing. In my opinion, the secret scrimmages were kind of in conception or concept-wise put in place to limit fan reaction and not have people want to hate their players before the season's even started. Now, with the results getting posted and these condensed formats on YouTube where you can watch every shot pretty much after the fact and do even more analysis, I think it's kind of pointless and a wash. And my thoughts on the secret scrimmages and the results of them is as long as you aren't getting embarrassed, right? Like losing by like 50 points or losing to like a D2 school or something like that as a power conference team, I think it's just a tune-up and that should be looked at as such.
Yep, and my biggest takeaways aren't necessarily the results or anything like that. I do want to be seeing who is not in the fold though, like Adam Bona in a scrimmage between Santa Clara and UCLA. Him being out of the fold, that's something that I want to look into a little bit more because we know that his season was cut short last year due to injury. Musa Cisse, someone who is a 2-time transfer. I don't think his waiver has been approved quite yet. Him sitting out for Ole Miss, that tells me, all right, there's still probably a little bit of a lack of clarity with his situation. These are the things I want to take a look at. I'm not sure if he's sticking any stock into things like that, but I do think that those sorts of notes are very important.
Oh, yeah. There are several players every single year that we're just kind of waiting for them to make their first appearance. I mean, we have people who are leaving. The big thing over the past few years has been personal issues. It's like, okay, is that you just need to step away? Are you dealing with a family matter? And maybe we don't necessarily need to know, but at the same time, it's like this guy is on the roster and he's not playing, and it just raises a big question mark. I mean, Isaiah Mosley last year for Missouri was a great example. I mean, I was really excited to see a guy from Missouri State who I've been backing for years play at that level, especially when Missouri was looking great, and he just never played. It was always personal reasons and who knows what, but now he's out of college. And it's kind of the similar thing when you look at like a Florida team. Zion Pullen, we're waiting on him to kind of perform well or even perform at all and show up in practices. And then there's players across the board who we just don't know or have a timetable on for whatever reason. That's where it's just kind of one of those things where, hesitate if you do want to bet those teams, monitor the situation, and then react accordingly after you've kind of seen a couple games under these teams' belts.
Yep, I agree with you there. And just being able to gauge who is going to be out there on the floor night number one, that's so important to do at this time. As joining me on the show, we do have Rob Donaldson. He does great work with his show/podcast. Rob's Best Bets right here on Coast to Coast Hoops, and that's a big thing that I'm taking a look at right now because I was just mentioning it with regards to some of these scrimmage results, seeing who's not on the box score. It's something that I do want to be taking a look at, but I do think that it is very important to be just scouring the social media feeds on Twitter/X, taking a look at some of these Instagram photos, trying to see who's not in the picture right now because there are some lingering issues right now. There are some injuries that are popping up, like Mark Freeman out there in the OVC for Morehead State, no doubt about it, Tolu Smith and Mississippi State. List goes on. And these are some of the biggest edges I think we can have for the upcoming season, just unearthing some of these news headlines, these clippings, being able to figure out who's not going to be out there on the floor and who's not going to be at 100%.
Yeah, and it's a great tool to kind of keep in your mind when you're thinking about, all right, don't overreact to a lot of these early season matchups. And we do get some early season tournament games. We get some really fun, ranked matchups where teams might not be healthy and this isn't going to be their final form necessarily. I mean, we saw that with Michigan State last year when they didn't have Malik Hall. And when they did have Malik Hall, two versions of that team. Right. And Malik Hall really didn't start playing until about, 14, 15 games into the season, it felt like. And so it's just about managing kind of your expectations of these teams and then not overreacting and let the line start to overreact. And that's where you can kind of capitalize on value once you know that this team is starting to get healthy, they're starting to gel, and they're starting to find their final form as the season goes on here.
Yep, I agree with you. And are there any particular teams that you do take a look at and you're a little bit off put by their issues? Because I mentioned one that certainly has been a red flag for me, that'd be Tolu Smith over at Mississippi State. He was their top scorer. He was their top rebounder. It was a team that was really hanging their head on defense last year. He was such a big part of what they did down low. And him being out, I think, is really going to be causing some issues for them. And I also mentioned Mark Freeman as well, a team out there in the OVC in Morehead State that I thought was going to be number 2 in the conference. Now I've got to drop them down quite a bit. But are there any teams in particular that you take a look at their injury situation and you are feeling a little bit off put by them based on what you have been seeing coming into the season?
Yeah, for sure. And I kind of mentioned one off cuff earlier on, but Florida Gators, man, this is a big year for this program because it's kind of fallen on some hard times. And there's questions about whether or not this is the direction they even want to go after this season. EJ Jarvis, one of their big transfers in from Yale, who was a really good just perimeter threat and a guy who could kind of stretch the floor in a big spot. We haven't seen him play. He's away from the program for personal reasons. Zion Pullen, who, if you've bet the Big West over the years and watched UC Riverside, you know that this guy has a ton of game. Right now, he is questionable for the season opener, and who knows how long he's going to actually be out. Right now, it could be even all the way up to late November, early December at that as well. And so that's a team that I really want to be excited about because they do have a host of talent this year. But, man, it's tough to know what that starting five and even their depth is going to look like right now.
Yeah, I do think that the depth itself, that is going to be something to take a look at. And speaking of depth, this is a team that we've talked about a lot here in the offseason, and they took another blow with regards to their depth because we were talking about injury information, taking a look at that. But something pretty exclusive to this year is wondering whether or not these two-time transfers are not going to be out there on the floor. And for West Virginia, the Bulls just keep on coming. Raekwon Battle, he is not going to be out there to start the season. West Virginia is appealing the fact that he did not get his waiver approved. And for this West Virginia team, I was pretty out on them to start with. But not only do they lose a starter, Raekwon Battle, but they just don't have any depth in general. And I'm not sure what your thought process is for West Virginia, but I feel like they and Cincinnati over the last 2 weeks really took some blows of what is going to be a brutal Big 12.
Yeah, and even if you want to add on to West Virginia's woes, Noah Farrakhan from Eastern Michigan, who obviously played a pretty big role with next to Omani Bates last season, he's also questionable whether or not his waiver is going to get approved as well. So
I just assumed he wasn't going to.
Yeah, and honestly, and that's kind of where a lot of these guys are leaning, unfortunately. You look at Cincinnati, they're getting hit pretty hard by that sort of thing as well. And it's an interesting time, especially with, the transfer portal really being unregulated, but in this sport in particular, because of the timing in the year, it's being heavily enforced. It seems more comparatively than other sports. It definitely lends itself to an interesting perspective. And you mentioned West Virginia, man. I mean, they had one of the rougher off seasons after it started really promising with all the talent that they were bringing in and keeping in-house. And then it started to leak out, their players were starting to leave and transfer elsewhere. And then obviously the Huggins news comes out, and that's about as rough as a draw that you can have to start up a season if you're looking for some optimism out of West Virginia.
Yeah, it's just not a good situation, to say the least, for our good friends over there at West Virginia. But what is a good situation is getting Rob Donaldson on the show. He's joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And Rob, certainly we are taking a look at some of these teams with some red flags and things that are not so great, but just taking a look at what we've got right now and how you've been preparing for the upcoming season. Who are a few teams that, as you've been diving in more and more, you're feeling a little bit more bullish on, and you're feeling a little bit better about them coming into the start of the season?
Yeah, if you want to start off in the Big Ten and look for a team that could be a really great tournament team and also a team that just covers a lot of ranked matchups early on, I'm looking at Michigan State. I mean, this is a team that returns a lot of senior guard play. They also have a lot of incoming freshmen that are extremely talented in the form of Xavier Booker, Jeremy Fears, and Cohen Carr. Mady Sissoko is a guy who I don't think gets appreciated enough just based on his overall toughness and being willing to scrap it up with some of these bigs in the Big Ten. Yeah, he might not be the best or most imposing guy at about 6'9", 6'10", but he is going to have some help this year. And I think the scoring is going to be there for Michigan State. And obviously Tom Izzo is Tom Izzo. I look for this team to really do some damage early. And then if you want to hop on down to, a mid-major or a lower conference like the OVC, I'm looking at Austin Peay to do a lot of damage early on. This is a team that is basically inheriting Northwestern State's roster from last season, where in the Southland, Northwestern State was dangerous. I mean, DeMarcus Sharp, Jamonte Black, Hanson Emmanuel, these guys were just really great players. They're joining their assistant coach who's taking over for Austin Peay here. And I really do think that team is going to do a lot of damage in a conference that I think is wide open comparatively to, 5 years prior when they had Murray State in there and a lot of better teams. So, yeah, I definitely look for Austin Peay to do some damage, and I think there's going to be a lot of value early on for them.
Yep, I do think that there is going to be some good value for them early on, and I do think that it is so important to take a look at what we are going to be getting towards the early part of the season, because I do think that there are teams with a lot of experience coming back that they are going to be able to be very solid early on, but they might get passed up a little bit more by some of these teams that bring in a lot of transfers. And by that, I mean a team like Florida Atlantic, I think, could come out house of fire early, but then fade away a little bit more to a team like a St. John's, where they have a lot of moving parts. And how much do you take a look at those sorts of situations and you view these teams a little bit differently towards the beginning part of the year to the end part of the year? Because I always do think that it is interesting when we see some of those teams where they're like covering every game out of conference, and then in conference, they sort of fade away.
It can go a bunch of different ways when you're talking about a roster that's inheriting a bunch of transfers that are individually talented. I mean, you look at Missouri last year, that team that had a bulk amount of transfers come in, and immediately out the gate, they were red hot. They were playing extremely well. And then it was kind of a tailing off effect where, for whatever reason, it just kind of didn't look the same as it did early on, later on in conference play and obviously in tournament play. One of the other things that can also happen is these guys just might not like each other and they might not gel. And so it really is one of those roll of the dice things that you really have to monitor and kind of wait on when you have a lot of transfers taking up the starting five, because, these are human beings. They have a human dynamic, and if they aren't meshing, it could be a disaster right out the gate. And for the rest of the season, it's not necessarily like, oh, yeah, these guys are going to grow to like each other over time. Sometimes they just don't. And it reflects on the court. So definitely interesting to kind of see how that plays out. But when you are bringing in multiple players, say like a St. John's from like an Iona or from the similar colleges or to have similar backgrounds or have overlapped during their playing careers, whether in AAU or college, it can definitely ease that transition. And those are the teams like, again, Austin Peay, for example, that I really looked back early on when you're talking about the transfer teams.
Yes, and I'm so glad that you bring up a team like Northwestern State because we have seen a lot of success with regards to teams that they bring in multiple transfers from the same school. Like, for example, Providence, they bring in Kim English. Kim English, he brings with him a trio of guys from George Mason. And I do think that these are good case studies of teams that they could be able to ascend early because typically we like to fade these teams that they bring in a lot of transfers. But I think that it is very situational. And when you've got a situation like that, South Florida's inheriting pretty much half of Kennesaw State's roster, certainly going to be a little bit of a step up in class for those guys. But I do take a look at those sorts of teams, and I think that those sorts of teams that they do bring in a lot of transfers, they're teams that you could feel a little bit better about than, say, a team that brings in 10 transfers with all 10 transfers coming from completely different schools, like New Mexico State, for example.
Or even a team that we just talked about, West Virginia, who just basically pieced together their entire roster and basically retained almost nobody, it feels like, from last year based on just players going pro, players graduating, players transferring out, and then just kind of piecing together a roster. Another team that, you know, it can't really get worse for, you feel like, but has that similar issue where there's a lot of guys from a lot of different schools that are going to try to figure out how to mesh, is a team like California. And this team's perception could not be lower, but they did load up on individual talent. It's going to be a nice little case study early on whether or not Cal turns into a team that can have a massive jump, because they do have the talent individually to do that. But will they mesh together? That's a whole different ballpark or a whole different question. So it is one of those things where I definitely trust those teams that have a lot of continuity and a lot of overlap. I'm the opposite way when it comes to just a team piecing together an entire roster from different planes of existence or different schools just because they're all individually talented.
Yep, I am right there with you. And there's so much to dive into for the start of the season, which is less than 2 weeks away. I know you're pumped up for it. I am pumped up for it. Rob, I know you're putting in great work to be able to get set for the upcoming season. So let the good people at home know it's all on tap for you and how people are able to follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yep. The best way to kind of follow what I'm doing and all the picks that I put out each day is going to be on X at RobDFB and also on YouTube at my name, just Rob Donaldson. I'm going to try to start posting daily videos on there again now that we have a lot of sports overlapping and, you know, it's not just one playoff game in baseball each and every day or every other day. Yeah, as always, Greg, really appreciate having me on, and I'm really excited for this college basketball season. I think we're going to have a lot of good content together.
I think that we are going to as well. It is going to be an absolutely tremendous college basketball season, and Rob is doing an amazing job of being able to take a look at it all. A big thanks to Rob for joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And if you do like sharing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. And if you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways we help fire those in. First one is my X timeline at June_1. Keep in mind, Larzium, maybe it does not matter. As per usual, please send these into the timeline. And other ways, find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire on whatever you'd like here on this podcast via that 5-star review. We're getting there. Less than 2 weeks away from the start of the college basketball season. Once we get in season, I'm getting you guys picks and analysis on every single game, every single day, and I am working hard on that college basketball spreadsheet. The link will be up probably in about a week or so. I have a lot of initial numbers already for these opening night games. I just want to take some time, make sure that there's not any injuries I'm missing, if I didn't leave out something critical that I should for the upcoming season. So I do want to take a little bit more time before I officially unveil all my opening night lines, as the bookmakers, they have yet to as well. So I feel justified in that, but that is going to be coming soon. And here on the podcast, we're going to be looking at everything that we need to know coming up for the upcoming season, talking to some great guests, picking their brains, and so much more. So I always appreciate you guys tuning in, and I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.
For the ones who get it done, the most important part is the one you need now. And the best partner is the one who can deliver. That's why millions of maintenance and repair pros trust Grainger, because we have professional-grade supplies for every industry, even hard-to-find products. And we have same-day pickup and next-day delivery on most orders. But most importantly, we have an unwavering commitment to help keep you up and running. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.